Okay, here's the last video for this collage workflow if you need to use this. Again, only use this if you're not drawing out your workup sketch, okay? So here's this final color scheme I'm going to go with. So I want to save this as a JPEG file. File. Save as. JPEG. Click Save. You want it as large of a file as you can get. Alright, here it is. So then I went over to Illustrator and I made a new artboard document that is, I think this is 8.5 by 14. So let's drop this on here and see how that looks right on there. Oh, that's pretty good sizing, yeah. Okay, so this is going to be the same process you've used for other things, tracing over. I'm going to double click on here, make it a template layer. Okay, but you notice that dims my colors, so I'm going to drop this on here one more time and just have this as a color palette example here. Just call this layer colors. Okay, lock that layer. So I'm just going to use this to kind of suck up different colors throughout the process. Alright, so I'm going to go from background to foreground, big shapes to small shapes. Let's call this, let's just do sky here. Okay, so you want to just cover that whole thing, get rid of that color. So I'll switch to my eyedropper tool. Where is it? Right here. It's going to suck up that color for the sky. And again, you'll end up making slight changes. I want that just a little bit lighter, at least for now. Okay. Now since my layer 1 is a template layer, I can hit Control Y or Command Y. There it goes. And start drawing these other shapes. And good. So I always build these first with no strokes, and then I'll add in some more strokes later if I need to. So I'll lock that for now. I'll probably come back later there, maybe add a few more shapes, maybe add a gradient on the sky, but that's it for now. So this next one, let's do mountain, and let's just start with the mountain there. We'll just do that for now. Okay, Control Y. Alright, so I'm just going to start tracing over this. So there's lots of little shapes on the mountain, the little textures and details and things like that. But for now, I'm just going to trace over that biggest shape of the mountain. And I'm building mostly with straight lines here. This shape in particular doesn't have a lot of curves in it. Control Y. Again, I'll just use the eyedropper tool, suck up that color. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. If you want your color palette, again, I like adjusting my colors with the color palette. So window color will display this color palette. I like it displayed as HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness, otherwise known as hue, saturation, and value. Okay. That's good for now. I'll come back to that layer. Let's make a new one. Call this buildings. Control Y. Okay. So there are lots of little intricate shapes here. So if I was to do this for an actual something I was working on, not just a demo, I would be going a lot slower, making sure these are all just tracing it a little bit more carefully. So I'm going to kind of speed through this a little bit just to simplify. So you guys can get the idea of the process here. But you're just going to keep going through and slowly start tracing these shapes. I want to get it to at least where I have kind of the biggest shapes in here. I'm just going to kind of go fast through here. Okay, let's do that. Control Y. Oh, this has no fill and no stroke on it. All right. Okay. So this, I'm just desaturating a little bit, make it slightly darker. Because eventually I'll go in and add, you know, all the some little windows and maybe a few other varieties of shapes in there. Let's do one for the Space Needle here. Space Needle is symmetrical, so you could build half of it at once and half again, but you don't have to do it that way. I kind of like the look of it where it may be just slightly asymmetrical because of how you created the shapes. But this one does have some more subtle curves and things in it. And I want this shape to be behind the buildings there. And there we go. Control Y. What color? It's a little bit lighter, so let's lighten that up a little bit. Okay, I'll have to come back to that and see if this is getting too much attention when it's that light. Okay, so that's good for that layer. What are we gonna do next? So next we'll kind of, let's do the water and the boat on the next layer. Okay, just back to this pen tool. So hopefully you guys have been practicing with this. And this is going to be the same process if you're doing this from one of your sketches as well. So use my eyedropper tool, suck up this color here. I usually like that water to be nice and saturated. Kind of makes it feel like it's glowing, reflecting the light a bit. Okay, down here for the fairy. Again, get that whole silhouette shape, and this is a very complicated shape. So again, I should be a little bit more careful with this if I was doing this for a personal project or hired for a client. But for this demo, I'm just going to kind of go fast through here. I would come back. These smokestacks are nice little shapes, so I would come back again after I get the major silhouette done and add those smokestacks in. Same with the little radars and things like that. Okay, is this going to be lighter or darker than... So it kind of has light and dark in it, so I'll just start by lightening it up. So we'll just go with that for now. Okay, and then I would come back and add a section that's darker in there. That's good there for now. Now we need our foreground. Control Y. Yeah, let's do a tree shape. Oops. Again, going kind of quickly. It will be nice to get an organic shape in here as well, kind of in the foreground. And I want this to be a pretty dark shape as well. I'm really going fast here. You guys don't need to watch me just work the pen tool forever. Hopefully this looks okay when I'm done with this weird quick version I'm doing. Okay, Control Y. See how that looks. Okay, cool. Switch to my eyedropper tool. Suck up that color. There we go. Yeah, that looks okay for this for these purposes here. Control Y. I'm gonna copy and paste this. Just shrink this down the same way we did with the photographs there. So get two tree shapes. Make sure it lines up where I'm going to move it over just a little bit. There we go. Okay, obviously now the last shape we need is just our grass, which I don't know what happened there. Back to the pen tool. I am going to go very fast here. I'm just going to kind of switch this along. You should be adding texture to things, so edges are a good place to add texture. But I'm just going to kind of fast forward through this little part here. There we go. Control Y. All right. And we need a tree trunk here. There we go. All right. So that's basically the step I wanted to get to. Okay. So as you can see, everything's in there, all the major shapes. You're following your color rough. The values are looking pretty good. Remember, you can put a layer on here. If I want this to turn things to dark black and white value. Oops, switch that around. Is this pure black? No, it's not. Okay, pure black there. Open up, have this shape selected. Open up your transparency panel and change this to saturation. And then this allows you to see it just in black and white values. Okay, and then obviously once you're done, you would go and do a clipping mask to get rid of those excess shapes. But then what you do is you just kind of go from shape to shape and start adding in more details. So go back to the mountain here, unlock that layer, Control Y, and just start tracing over some of these cool texture shapes. Help make it feel like a rocky mountain. And again, there's a lot of information here. And you don't want this to stand out too much. So you have to kind of edit the amount of detail that you get in there. You're not going to want to include all of those, but just enough to give it some texture. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty cool there. So you just keep doing that. I would go into the ferry needs a lot of work, more details. The buildings need some other shapes, some windows in there. I need some more values. On the Space Needle, I probably don't need much in the foreground, really. If I was doing this and taking more time, I would just change this so I have a grassy texture all along here, but I don't need a lot of details here. You want more of your details right in this section. Okay, and remember, you're also going to need texture somewhere. I might put a subtle little gradient on the sky, maybe some texture in the moon, but at least I have enough negative space up here for my font. So you just keep going in, keep adding smaller and smaller shapes, kind of each section, but keep most of your details, textures, right here in the focal point of the imagery, right in this section.